There are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained, things that most people don't want to know about.
Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
That is where we come in.
We got one!
Someone has to deal with it, and who are you going to call?
We're the best! We're the beautiful! We're the only
Ghostbusters!
Hey everyone, I'm Kumail Nanjiani.
And I'm Patton Oswalt. You know, when you think of Ghostbusters, and I'm talking 4 decades of hilarious, scary, one-of-a-kind movie magic, I think we can all agree that we are probably the first 2 names that come to mind.
So it only makes sense we've been asked to guide you through an incredible look back at this iconic franchise.
I mean, I don't know how we're gonna top this.
Who can forget the first time they saw a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man terrorizing the streets of New York?
Or a bunch of oddly possessed, mischievous mini marshmallows you wouldn't want anywhere near your cup of cocoa.
That's the thing I love about the Ghostbusters films, that unique mix of good-natured terror, humor, and heart.
Or as I call it, the full Patton Oswalt.
What?
It's a compliment. For me, the coolest thing is how each film somehow ups the ante on all of that.
Right? And that goes for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, where you and I make our debut in the Ghostbusters universe. So cool. But I still can't believe it. We're busting ghosts alongside Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, and McKenna Grace, as well as the OGs. Makes me feel like I've joined some kind of legendary club.
Well, technically speaking, your character is kind of just explaining the lore of the death chill from the comforts of a cozy library.
No spoilers. Don't spoil it. All right.
This Ghostbusters movie is about the Spengler family. It's kind of a continuation of Afterlife. They've since moved to New York City to start a family business of ghostbusting.
The Spengler family, through the discovery of their family lineage, learned that the next stage of the Spengler story would see them coming to New York City, to the ancestral home of Ghostbusters, and straight to the firehouse.
We wanted to see Ecto 1 back in the firehouse, we wanted to see our characters in flight suits, and we wanted to hear the wail of Ecto 1 screeching down one of the avenues of New York one more time.
You keep the DNA of it alive by mixing lightness and comedy with fear and threat.
I gotta warn you, I mean, I can be scary.
Yeah, you're a monster.
As these films have evolved and it's gone from Ivan to Jason to Gil, there's a lot of love and pride, I think, that it isn't just making a movie.
Okay. This new one is completely unlike any story we've seen in a Ghostbusters film, but it still very much feels Ghostbusters.
To hand the torch to this talented group is really gratifying.
Hey, what's the one thing every single actor who ever played a Ghostbuster has in common?
Great agent, an enviable IMDb entry, unique fingerprints.
Yeah, okay, all that. I guess what I was thinking more along the lines of impeccable comedic timing and an every-person quality that grounds the franchise and makes it so relatable.
Exactly. In fact, I think it was the great Sir Paul Rudd who once said,
That's part of the appeal, actually, of the Ghostbusters franchise. You're always dealing with these very intelligent outsiders who are trying to figure out what's going on in the situation through science and smarts.
Wait, how did you do that?
because I'm a very intelligent outsider. You know, never mind. The point is, everyone can see themselves as a Ghostbuster, and the amazing casting throughout all the films underscores that idea.
Historically, a Ghostbusters movie has always been about 4 characters who decide to open up a ghostbusting company.
I'm here about the receptionist job.
You're hired. This is Winston Zedmore. He's here about the job.
Beautiful, you're hired.
We be fast and
They be slow!
My way into the Ghostbusters timeline was going through a family story. I needed a mom who could be just dead honest with her kids.
Hey, Phoebes, at school today, don't be afraid to just start a conversation.
Are you kidding me? That's horrible advice.
And Carrie Coon is that wonderful Midwestern actress who has honesty and doesn't pull any punches.
Oh, yeah?
In Phoebe, I wanted the audience to meet a young girl who is a genius, who feels like an outsider, and she discovers she's just like her grandfather.
Her grandfather was Egon Spengler. He was a Ghostbuster.
And Trevor, a teenage boy who all he wants to do is drive.
You have a car?
It's Cadillac.
The Ghostbusters, it's a movie about friendship, but the Ghostbusters ended up to be an extended family of their own.
I love all you guys.
Ivan and Bill and Ernie and Dan and Harold, they just created something so special with the first film. And I think that everybody who watched it could feel it.
Ghostbusters was the first big American film experience that I had.
Ghostbusters has always been a film about outsiders. Outsiders who find heroic moments through the act of ghostbusting. When I think about the originators, I really think about Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis and my father sitting in a room together, writing and conceiving this film.
The script was designed for the three comedians that had worked together forever.
We were at the peak of our careers there in terms of our impact and acceptance as artists in the industry.
Dan Aykroyd is an explosion of ideas.
Sir, what you had there was what we refer to as a focused, non-terminal repeating phantasm, or a class 5 full roaming vapor.
Bill Murray is one of the most inspired improvisational actors ever. I did 6 films with him, and I could never say that his contributions didn't put those movies over the top.
So often, Bill would come up with a particular line and maybe 4 other lines. I remember sitting in front of the sort of banquet room that they all came out of, and I didn't know what line was going to come out of Bill's mouth.
What a lot of fun. All taken care of. We had some fun, but we gotta go. I could use a tall, cold one right now. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
And I decided my character would never smile. He had no irony, he was completely humorless, and that was the intellectual ground of that character.
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
I kept saying, we need someone to talk to who could ask the questions that the real audience could ask.
That's bad, isn't it?
Yeah. And Ernie Hudson came around, and it's this lovely quality about him.
He is sort of the everyman. I mean, he's kind of, the other guys are a bit more zany. Winston is sort of very practical. But I think he is meant to be that. He's meant to be sort of the balance there.
When someone asks you if you're a god, you say, yes!
There are all of these characters. Sigourney Weaver and Annie Potts are great and play amazing characters.
Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Oh yeah, and then there's Rick Moranis. And who's funnier than Rick Moranis?
I'm having a big party for all my clients. It's my 4th anniversary as an accountant, you know, and even though you do your own tax return, which you shouldn't do, I'd like you to stop by, being that you're my neighbor and all.
Well, thank you, Luce. I'll really try to stop by.
Some of the new actors that are on this one are like Kumail Nanjiani and James Acaster, Patton Oswalt.
What?
To have these really funny people and really talented actors come on board has been great.
Cool. Empirically. You know, it's not just the cast and characters of Ghostbusters that makes these films unforgettable. The passion and sense of storytelling from Jason Reitman and Gil Kenan, the current creative force behind the franchise, are at the center of the ongoing success.
That's true. Here's to the next 40 years, because these guys have this world in their blood.
The mood of any set is really determined by a director.
The lion turns its head.
Gil Kenan is an amazing filmmaker and Jason Reitman's writing partner as well, and he's on this film as the director, and he's great.
Jason and Gil wrote this one together. Jason is around producing this, so it does feel as if the connective tissue of everything else is still there.
Gil and Jason have continued to create resonance between these new films and the original, always focusing on a bit of irreverence and the unwitting anti-heroes.
Jason's father obviously directed the first 2 Ghostbusters movies.
Action.
And Jason's sort of taken on the mantle since he passed. And so we really feel his connection to the world.
Jason Reitman grew up on that set. Jason Reitman knew all the OGs even from a little boy.
1, 2, 3, and then this is 4.
Oh, I'm sorry, that green button.
Yeah.
Sorry, I knew it was over here.
And then firing is that.
There you go.
Great.
Okay.
So,
we're gonna kill you eventually.
Of course, we can't talk about the legacy of ghostbusting without talking about the true OG Ghostbuster himself, Ivan Reitman.
Well, talk about a legend.
For Ivan Reitman, who did so much great stuff, this was really the jewel in his crown.
Ivan had enormous love for film and an enormous goodness. He was a lovely person, and that kind of loveliness and art came together. And that's the atmosphere. Because the uniqueness about Ghostbusters, it's a deeply, provocatively, simple, lovely thing. There's nothing quite like it.
Ivan was just an extraordinarily gifted man. And I was blessed to have had the opportunity to work with him. Certainly our relationship, our friendship grew over the many years I knew him.
Now this is more like it.
Why do you get the proton pack and I'm wearing a swim cap?
That's a mood reader. That tests the reactions of psychomagnetheric slime.
Or does it? It smells like my grandma's water aerobics class.
Look, the fact that it looks like that is the whole point. Even though all the gadgets and ghost traps have evolved throughout the franchise, the one thing that's never changed is they look and feel like something handmade with ingenuity.
That's right. One of the coolest things about Ghostbusters is how much is real. And that's a credit to the talented special effects artists, puppeteers, and prop makers at the heart of this franchise from the very beginning. What are you doing, man?
It's just awesome. I love it.
You're a grown man.
Beat him up! Go! Okay.
When we did Ghostbusters back in '84, there was no CG. So we had to figure out how to tell the story in the old-fashioned way.
Well, that wasn't such a chore now, was it?
The packs, the traps, the car, the PKE meter. Part of directing Ghostbusters Afterlife was somehow getting back into my father's shoes and trying to understand how they made the original film back in 1984.
The idea here was that we would be working with almost homemade stuff.
Okay, whatever happens, let's be professional.
I love the scene with Rick where they put the brain cap on, the colander with wires. Now that's just a prop guy coming up with something, you know, taking what we wrote and saying, okay, we'll do this.
It was that kind of low-tech stuff that actually became funnier and more intriguing than any kind of slick, new high-tech stuff we could design.
What is that thing you're doing?
It's technical.
One of the real joys of telling this story was being able to age all the equipment and ephemera that we associate with Ghostbusters and through it tell the story of what's been happening over the last 30 years.
Killer replica.
A replica of what?
A ghost trap? When I see a real proton pack or a ghost trap, I'm kind of taken back to being a kid.
In Ghostbusters Afterlife, we see the proton pack again and the trap. We are seeing all the details of ghost busting of years before. The scratches, the bruises, the cuts, the breaks, the rust. And I think that's kind of part of the fun of it.
Whenever I first put it on shooting, yeah, I cried. I had the proton pack and the Ghostbuster suit, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening?
They've also invented some new technology. We've got our little remote control trap is back, and then we've added a new element, which is the drone, which I get to pilot, which is really fun for me.
Seeing the Ecto-1 behind me in all of its glory is really exciting.
The physical body of Ecto-1 is a car that they only built 100 of. It's a rare specimen. There's a reason why it's so unique in our minds.
When it comes to Ecto-1, it's a movie star. There's a new coat of paint and some new racing stripes. The joy that it elicits is just unparalleled.
It was just fun being in Manhattan and stealing shots and slinging that Cadillac around the corners and people going, what is that thing?
We drove that car around Manhattan, never stopping for stoplights. That was so much fun. You just pleased too, and even the cops would look at you and go like, well, I guess those guys are, I don't know, Coast Guard or something. They didn't know what the hell we were. We were just driving around doing anything we wanted.
We're building all sorts of props for the film, including new proton packs and other new items that you'll have to wait and see in the film. We've got to make an original Ghostbusters pack, and that's proven quite challenging. We've had a lot of help from the Ghostbuster fans. They've been really helpful in sourcing stuff. It has to be very, very specific.
What would the Ghostbusters be without a ghost or two to keep them on their toes?
Out of business. I guess, luckily for us, there's always something strange lurking in the neighborhood.
Here's a look at the ghosts, ghouls, specters, and supernatural entities that have kept the Ghostbusters mostly in business all these years, including some of them that have made repeat appearances, and perhaps one of the most terrifying of all, Garaka.
There is something about Ghostbusters. Everything that you think is going to terrify you makes you laugh. Everything that you think is going to make you laugh scares the crap out of you.
My favorite ghost from the first movie, the librarian ghost. Because of how scary it is.
Get her! It's Slimer, come on. He's my favorite.
Slimer is very popular with audiences.
We all have our favorite ghost in the Ghostbusters universe. Mine and many others is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. There's something so iconic and strange and wonderful about the sight of seeing him walk down the street in Manhattan.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
And Gil, Ken, and I wanted to see tiny baby-sized mini Marshmallow Men. They're just curious. They want to try everything. They're like 5-year-olds.
In this movie, Ray smuggled the mini puffs back from Somerville to New York City.
Gozer was kind of an interesting problem for the movie. What kind of person looks like a supernatural being?
It's a girl. I thought Gozer was a man. It's whatever it wants to be.
And for Ghostbusters 2,
We wanted someone who had lived before, who was truly a ghost. And so Vigo the Carpathian was the perfect embodiment.
Now is the season of evil.
Evil?
Oh my god, there's a lot of spooky specters in this Ghostbusters movie.
There's a lot of really fun new ghosts.
Possessor can take a hold of anything and do exactly what the name also says, and just possess things.
And then we have Pukey.
He's cute.
Yeah. Hey, buddy.
I think he's my favorite because he just looks so silly.
And there's a new villain, Garaka. He does this thing called the death chill. He literally scares you to death.
Did you know the original Ghostbusters is still considered one of the most successful and groundbreaking comedies ever?
I did know that. If you had to pick a favorite moment from Ghostbusters, what do you have?
Okay, I'm not making a joke here. It just popped in there, but it's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. What about you, man?
I'd probably have to say when Egon helps Phoebe defeat Gozer in Afterlife, you know? Talk about the literal and figurative passing of the proton pack. Not only was it a love letter to Harold Ramis, but you're Jason Reitman picking up the mantle of directing and Ivan putting on Egon's jumpsuit and standing in for the character for a take.
Ivan Reitman did that?
Yeah, it's his hand holding Phoebe's.
I didn't know any of that.
That's Ivan's hand.
Oh my God.
In a franchise about the family we have and the family we find, it doesn't get more family than that.
Well, when you talk about family, I mean, I think of Jason Reitman's big scene in Ghostbusters 2.
My dad says you guys are full of crap, and that's why you went out of business.
See, that's why people loved and continue to love these movies. Ghostbusters fever completely took over in 1984, and it only expanded with each movie since. The phenomenon was and is real.
Yeah, tell me about it. Without the love between Ghostbusters and its fans, we wouldn't be here talking about another installment. And I wouldn't have that cool set of Slimer sheets on my childhood bed.
I'm gonna leave that right there as we take a look at the global phenomenon of Ghostbusters.
I consider myself the first Ghostbusters fan. I was 7 years old on set, and before anyone knew what a terror dog was or what a proton pack was, I was actually on set. I remember being on set the day that the Marshmallow Man exploded and melted, and they had a stuntman there getting, pelted with shaving cream, and I walked home with this little piece of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that sat on my shelf all the way through high school.
It was really the fans who made Ghostbusters what it is today. They took it to a whole other place. I mean, it became theirs in a really, really special way. And I tell you, it's a part of something bigger than what we made. And that's, to me, what's really exciting.
I love this town!
The fact that it still holds such a place in people's hearts for generations is quite incredible to me. That's so unique in our world. It's a great gift.
Hello, New York!
Ghostbusters is literally my favorite thing in the world that's not a human being or an animal. It was my first favorite movie. I've seen all the Ghostbusters movies so many times. I've seen the entire animated series. So I'm a massive, massive, massive Ghostbusters fan.
We made the original movie so quickly, there were no toys, and none of the stuff you see around us was really out for the first movie.
Oh, you mean the Ghostbusters hot beverage thermal mug and free balloons for the kids?
There's several dolls of me, and people keep seeing them, Legos and things, and they bring them to me as gifts.
What I enjoy is when I meet the people who work on these projects and how much fun they have with them, because we've given them a whole arena to be creative within their discipline that they might not have otherwise had. Everybody who's worked on the toys, the games, The comic books, the plush toys, the action figures, they've just had a great time with it, and it shows in the way they've executed them. They just are all so neat and fun, and it's a very toyetic property.
We see tattoos on people. I mean, tattoos of Stay Puft, of me with the cigarette hanging out of my mouth, of Billy on the floor being slimed. They put it on their bodies, you know? That's penetrating culture.
What happened? Are you okay?
He slimed me.
That's great.
There's hundreds of Ghostbusters clubs all over the world. Yeah. And each have their own special symbol and decal.
Patch, yeah.
A patch, and I think we've got hundreds of them now in our office.
I mean, France, Germany, South America, they're Ghostbuster chapters. And the really cool thing for me is they do a lot of charity work. They get together and they really make a difference in their communities. It speaks to the heart of the movies. And that's what they do. They go out and they will make their appearances and they'll draw a crowd for charity. It's really neat to see.
Well, Patton, we've done it. 40 years of Ghostbusters in less than 30 minutes.
I'm still blown away. It's been 40 years because it feels as fresh and fun as ever. Or, as you might call it, the full Patton Oswalt.
No, I would not call it that. That means something very different. But I am excited for people to check out the next chapter, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Oh, me too. And what better way to prepare for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire than by watching all these amazing films, either for the first or 100th time. And don't forget...
Don't do it.
I'm not going where you think
Please don't.
this.
Okay,
I'm not going where you think I'm going. Okay, here we go. I was going to say, if you see some anomalies...
Here we go.
...in the place where you live...
Please, we talked about this. You said you weren't...
I suggest you pick up the phone
Can someone help and just play the real theme song, please?
Something strange in your neighborhood. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! If there's something weird and it don't look good, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! I ain't afraid of no ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts.